Hello, everybody, and welcome to what's going to be a very exciting SkySwitch webinar geared for the SkySwitch reseller community. I am overjoyed, as is the entire SkySwitch management team, at the number of resellers who have registered for today's webinar. I see that people are starting to come in. The count is going up and up and up. We had 148 registrants. That's a new record, and that tells you the interest in our topic today. And our topic today is one that is really interesting. As a matter of fact, it's one of the most interesting topics we're probably going to address this month because it's so timely, it's so important, and it's so helpful. I'm Andy Abramson. I am the Chief Marketing Officer of SkySwitch. I've been hosting these webinars now for a few months, and I have to say thank you to all of our resellers who take the time out of their busy schedule to tune in, to watch, to listen, and learn. One of our goals this year was to increase reseller knowledge, and today's webinar, which is all about the TeamMate connector and Microsoft Teams and how it integrates, not just works with, but how it integrates with the SkySwitch platform is so important. We're going to be joined today by a very dear friend, a very close friend of SkySwitch's, someone many of you who attended last October's Vectors Conference in Orlando got to meet, got to hear, got to see speak, and gave you a glimpse into the future then. Well, that future is here today. We're also going to, don't forget at the end, we're going to have Q&A. Obviously, you can throw some questions to chat, and I'll try and weave them in as we talk to our guest, Micah Singer from TeamMate Technologies. We also have Fareed Ashen, our product management specialist, who has done a lot of work with Micah on the TeamMate integration, and many of you already know Fareed. So with that, I'm going to say welcome aboard to everybody. We're going to cover the value of Teams. We're going to address the communication trends that are going on. We're going to tell you how this integration with Microsoft Teams through TeamMate technology can really provide significant value for you, for your customers, especially those Office 365 power users. So today, Micah Singer, the Managing Director of TeamMate Technology, he's been working with us. He's going to talk all about TeamMate Technologies and our integration. By the way, we do have a beta running right now. It is still open for registration, though we're getting pretty close to the number that Micah and the SkySwitch folks feel is all we need. So if you haven't signed up or filled out the form, the link is in the chat that Emily Vasquez, our great producer, our marketing manager, is here today. She's dropping that in. So we're also going to, be able to answer your questions at the end. And don't forget, we are raffling off 3 SkySwitch swag packs. So ask a question and you might have a shot at winning a package of t-shirts, socks, pop sockets, and hats. And with that, without any further ado, to welcome everybody, here's Micah Singer from TeamMate Technologies.
Andy, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. Very warm introduction. I love this crowd. I met a lot of you out at Vectors last fall. It was a great event, a lot of energy, and was really excited to do this webinar. So today, after I guess that was about 7 months ago, talked to you about the vision for integrating SkySwitch's PBX into Microsoft Teams. A lot's changed, and I'm going to hopefully shed more light on what we talked about then, and make some offers to you guys to be able to try it out, to join some of your colleagues who are already doing so. And I really look forward to answering your questions at the end.
Great. So Micah, why don't you talk a little about why Microsoft Teams is a runaway train right now? You can't go a day without seeing Teams in the news, whether it's them winning a contract, whether it's a new feature like being able to have backgrounds like Zoom virtually. Why is Teams so, as we like to say, huge?
Yeah. So, and I like to think a lot of people are on this call because they they know me, or they're super excited about SkySwitch or whatever, for whatever reason, and that's probably all true. But really, it's about Microsoft Teams. So many of you know Microsoft Teams really well. Your MSPs. Others of you know the PBX better and are ending up in meetings and are being asked to know Microsoft Teams. And there's a few reasons. First of all, it's free. This is something that comes with every Office 365 subscription. Persistent chat, the entry point for Teams is really important within organizations. Globally, about 50% of business users around the world buy Office. A lot of them have moved to the cloud version, Office 365 with Teams. They're really logical places where if you like chat, then you're going to like some of the add-ins, like conferencing, document sharing, and calling, which we'll talk in a lot of detail today. It's really nice that everything is integrated. This is ease of use. End users like that. And right now, for whatever reasons in the market, and we can discuss that, or you probably all have ideas on that, there are really no viable competitors. Microsoft seems to have a unique set of features and products already that they've very nicely wrapped into Teams. So all these things have led Microsoft to grow from, I think they were an announced 13 million daily active users last July when SkySwitch said, we need this, to where we are as of May of this year at 75 million daily active users. What's happened in that time? A lot's happened in that time, but what's happened really is that a year ago and before, because Teams has been out for a few years, there were a lot of users who were sort of being force-fed Teams. It was part of Microsoft Office. And then that really changed dramatically over these COVID months and maybe a bit before. I'm always curious about what is the true engagement, how many people are really using it. And so I've pulled out this mobile download statistics. These are available by month. Through February, there were about 2 million downloads of the Teams mobile application, and now that's up to about 10 million. I think that might have been through May numbers I found. There's over 220 million Microsoft Office 365 users, so it's a small percent. However, mobile download users tend to be quite engaged users, and that's what's really exciting. A lot of the Microsoft users are much more engaged now because of all the variables in the business workplace normally, and COVID. There's another,
Has COVID really, do you think that this is just fortuitous timing for Microsoft with COVID and that it gave it a little boost, or do you think that the adoption rate would eventually get there because of the way the product is built and how pervasive it is within the enterprise?
Yeah, the latter. I think COVID has accelerated it dramatically, but I think the trends we're seeing in them, it's a nice lead into this next slide. Thank you, Andy. The trends we're seeing in the market are that efficiency and ease of use of the standard business tools, which are chat, video calls, document sharings, meetings, calendars, and I would say strongly calling, are something that Microsoft Teams does really well. So the slow growth was happening. 13 million I mentioned in November of last year, in July. I think by December they had announced 20 million. So already, that kind of growth in a few months is really impressive. 32 million pre-COVID in March, and then the huge jump with COVID. So I think it just took something that was on a strong trajectory and put it on steroids.
But Micah, Microsoft has tried this phoning thing for so long. They had Link, then they did Skype for Business. And it's like every 3 or 4 years you hear of another Microsoft attempt to roll out a phone product. And here again, you've got Microsoft saying, oh, well, we got a soft phone. What makes this so dramatically different than everything else Microsoft has tried to date?
I would say probably the single largest factor is end users like it. So users that end up using, I usually use this, 3 or more of the cornerstone, the foundational tools like you see on the screen, video, doc share, meetings, etc., tend to really like having that all in one place. and couple that with Microsoft having solved a lot of the problems for mobility on the mobile applications, both on Android and iOS. I think it's, before it was a lot of this was pushed out by corporations. It was a win for corporations. Now it's a win for users and corporations. So that's sort of the trend I've seen that's changed the game from Skype for Business and previous versions.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so now you look and you say, well, there's 350 million or so, or hundreds of millions of PBX users around the world that want those other things. They, hopefully, I think a lot of them want PBX and value call control, but they also need these other things. So they're looking, and what your UC strategy is something that is on everyone's mind, and Microsoft's presented a compelling one. I think that's what's changed the conversation.
Isn't this a little bit that the whole idea of the call has changed? I mean, we used to say, I'm going to call you, and it meant picking up a desk phone or picking up your mobile phone and calling over the PSTN. Even a VoIP call would go to the PSTN at some point and be, the in and out, or maybe it was VoIP to VoIP, but it was a call. And in today's language, when people say they're going to call you, it doesn't necessarily mean a phone call anymore. So as part of the trend in the way the world is shifting, in whether people are using Signal, or whether they're using Zoom, or whether they're using Skype, there's a lot of different calling that's going on. And part of that has likely led to the evolution of Teams, because video and chat and document sharing and having a group meeting and tying it into your calendar and being able to pick from your contacts, that's more than just the old idea of a plain old telephone call. It's the modern day version of it. And it's changed a lot, and it's changed in about 5-year increments. And right now, the video aspect of calling, I remember, years ago working with Nokia, and we had video calling on our N series phones, but the mobile operator had to support it, and then there was a workaround to it. But nowadays, people pick up their smartphone and call, and it sounds like with what you're doing, that one of the trends is that this shift in what a call is driving Teams.
Yeah, well, I mean, and there's a lot, unpacking what you said. There's a lot in there. I mean, there's speaking. A call is, I'm going to speak to you, right? It's not just a call, and so there's speaking, but then there's video. I'm going to see you, and so people still speak to each other, and so where they speak from is, people for a decade or more, people say, well, it's irrelevant where we're speaking from. But ultimately, it's got to be easy to use for the end user, because all of us in the technology industry have one perspective, and our customers have another one. They want it to work smoothly, and so I think being able to make calls from anywhere or speak to someone from anywhere is one thing, and making it really easy and intuitive is what Microsoft's done here. And yeah, let me tell you a bit how they've done that. It's just sort of.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. One of the things I've been reading about is this thing called direct routing. And when I started reading through direct routing, I saw all these things it was going to need. So can you really dive into that and give everybody a simplification of it, and then a little bit, without getting too technical, and if we get really technical, Fareed can also jump in, but let's give a good understanding of what direct routing is, how it works, and why it's so important for resellers to understand its importance.
Right, no, absolutely. So just under 2 years ago, Microsoft announced this thing called direct routing, capital D, capital R, and what it is a defined and relatively easy way to build SIP trunk lines into Microsoft. And prior to that, there were workarounds. There was Skype for Business Cloud. There was a Cloud Communicator Edition. There were other ways of doing it that were much more difficult. And this direct routing was essentially opening up the calling capabilities in Teams to the PSTN, and that was neat. That's really, I think, is really important, because there's always been sort of kludgy workarounds for click a button, activate some other thing on your computer or your mobile phone, different ways of doing things and making it work. But Microsoft made it totally native, and that was a game changer. They made it easy. So this diagram that you're looking at here was the diagram that they put out on, sort of the summer of 2018 when they announced this. The dotted line between Microsoft and the provider infrastructure is the SIP direct route, and you're the PBX or the voice trunks, the whole SkySwitch community, and we provide the dotted line and the certified session border controller. That's the TeamMate connector, and the users are on the other side. They're just sitting in front of Teams. So that's the basics. What this means is a few things. First, so in this, this is a really important slide when I'm describing this concept. On the left is direct routing. This is what you get if you activate that direct routing tool that Microsoft has put out there. You use all native Teams dialing features, history menus, contacts for dialing, anything you would use to dial normally in Teams. At the end of it, you have a SIP trunk user in Teams. Many of you sell SIP trunks and have SIP trunk users. You know about this. There's a lot of offers out in the market right now selling SIP trunks to Teams users. Call Tower I see is one name a lot, but there's everyone from Verizon on down, and I think that's an important market. On the right is what we're doing and what we're announcing today with SkySwitch. So of course we're using these native dialing features, but on top of it, we're allowing you to register the actual SIP user, the SkySwitch NetSapiens SIP user who is your customer. So it works just like a soft phone within Microsoft Teams. A soft phone is composed of dialing, but there's also a lot of SIP messaging that goes back and forth. So we also subscribe to dialogue events. So when a notification happens from the PBX, the user gets it in Teams and vice versa. And finally, what we've done, I think that is really cool, and it's really unique in the market right now. You build and customize a Teams application for each Microsoft Enterprise, your business customer. This is the PBX application. It's where notifications are presented. It's where you can tell the PBX what to do via quick codes or soft keys, and where the end user can see his or her portal. And I'll show you these in a few slides. I think it's really important to understand these distinctions.
Micah, a lot of companies are out there talking integration with Teams, but it really sounds like they're making their platforms interoperable with Teams versus integrating it. You mentioned this morning, it's call to Teams. Can you explain the difference between the proper integration that we've done with TeamMate technologies and what this call to Teams thing is?
Yeah, and then it's good to mention them by name. So first of all, anyone selling SIP trunking is this first bullet point, the using native Teams dialing to make and receive PSTN calls. That's leveraging direct routing. There's one other provider, it's called a Teams, company about our size, who has built the SIP registration. So this registers SIP user on a PBX, use normal phone features, and activates the dialer in Teams. So, and you'll see that. What we've done, which takes it a big step further, is actually allow you to customize and insert into Teams a PBX application that the end user, the person who's actually using Teams, uses to look at their portal, probably most notably, but also get notifications when things happen on the PBX or they want the PBX to do things. So it's a direct line of communication, not just on a dial pad into the PBX.
So this is a complete user interface and a better, easier, more natural experience for the user versus them having to just have simplified functions and doing things like star this, star that. I remember in the old days, before we had transfer buttons on phones, you would do a *7 and then that would let you transfer a call. Why don't you show everybody how TeamMate works?
Yeah, so that's right. I mean, and what you want to do once you have that capability, I mean, every enterprise is a little bit different on how they use star features or how they use their PBX. So it's really important to have the flexibility to accommodate those different models. So schematically, this is what it looks like. On the left is your existing phone system. This is SkySwitch. It's that phone there represents one of your phone user. And that, we don't touch that. All we do is we add a second appearance for that, a second device or endpoint for that same user. And we use this TeamMate connector to register and maintain and subscribe and make, it's essentially the soft phone firmware that registers to the PBX. And the TeamMate application is what communicates and what makes it a graphical user experience within Teams for the user as they use this extension of their PBX. How it works and what it looks like from the end user is should be pretty familiar if you've looked at Teams. I mean, these are a picture of the mobile client and the desktop. I think it's a client software. It might be in the browser. This dialer is a Teams standard dialer. This is your PBX dialer. This number is your PBX number. When you call it, the first stop is a PBX, just like any soft phone, and it follows the rules that you control on the PBX. So within the application that we put in, there are three general parts. There's the bot, which you can see here, where the PBX sends notifications. You can type in quick codes to activate PBX features. Notifications are SIP events. So for instance, MWI, or message waiting indicator, gets sent out when a voicemail gets received on the PBX. We present that as a listen to your voicemail right here. Do not disturb. Other settings that you might want to control are status is provided, and an interface to communicate with your PBX is presented. For a lot of people, the portal you embed, and I would say particularly for SkySwitch customers, the portal is really important because you can do quite a bit in it. There's a lot of features that the end user can see there. You can even listen to voicemail right here, or I think you can even see your call history and manage other things. We set this up as a single sign-on, so there's no fumbling around with passwords. So once the end user is signed into Teams, they're signed into the portal if you've set it up right and put their passwords in. So we don't, anything that interferes with getting to the portal or putting in passwords undermines usage. And then finally, there is a feature code page. Essentially, you can extend features into Teams, turn them into buttons, which are also available as quick codes. Every enterprise likes different buttons, so you decide which ones to expose per enterprise. In fact, everything you see in here is set up per enterprise: the naming of the app, the graphics, the feature codes, the portal, and the notification management.
This reminds me of the Merlin phones I had when I worked for the Philadelphia Flyers running their office, and we put a whole Merlin system in on the desk and connected to a System 75, and the ability to customize the feature keys was exactly like this, so that you could you had hard keys, but they're being represented as soft keys. So this really harkens back, fond memories of being connected to things like Centrex systems and System 75, System 85s, but it's really advanced, and now it's sitting right inside your desktop. Now, do you have the same functionality within the mobile app?
Absolutely, yeah. There's been some progress. The applications that you have as part of your Teams user do extend into mobile. I think there's been some progress. I think maybe older versions of the mobile app don't the mobile Microsoft Teams app do not support the integrations. But they actually had announced they were going to do it, and then they allowed that support. So absolutely, it should be exactly the same. It's a little hard to push some of these small buttons from your mobile interface. A little better on the tablet, which is also available. But nonetheless, we've seen a lot of progress in what Microsoft's allowed us to do and allowed software vendors like us to do in Teams, and that's been really encouraging.
That's great. Well, you've showed us what it can do. How do you set this whole thing up? You're a reseller, and the customer calls up and says, hey, I've got 25 licenses for Office 365. I want to add some Teams functionality. How do I get it to work with my existing SkySwitch accounts?
Yeah, so the participants on this call who are MSPs and who deal with Microsoft understand the complexity of the Microsoft side of licensing and so forth. And you know, if you don't know the PBX can be pretty daunting as well. But ultimately, this is what you're doing. You're connecting the PBX and its complexity and Microsoft Office and its complexity together. And how you do that are in 3 steps. First, you need to build direct routing, Microsoft to the PBX. Like I said, that's a pretty standardized process right now, and quite quick and straightforward. You know, depending on Microsoft's processing of the requests. Next, you add users. To do this, you enter the PBX info and link it to the Teams user. It's pretty much that simple. The PBX side of it looks a lot like setting up a soft phone. You know, you have to identify where, and you have to put in SIP passwords and credentials and so forth, but pretty straightforward. And finally, you build the application. And this is the application that every user with this connector in that enterprise has access to. And there's some configurations within what you can do in the connector. And as we move out of beta into GA and beyond, that's where a lot of the excitement is, what you can do in Teams with the PBX. So that's where we'll see a lot of expansion in the application over time.
What's the reseller model like? So how does this, you know, work for the reseller so they can see the customer, they can look at status, they can adjust tools, you know, right. How do you make it work for them?
Yeah, so absolutely. So for everyone on this call, if you're interested in the TeamMate connector, you're going to be a reseller. And through SkySwitch, you get access to the reseller portal, which lets you manage all of your business customers. Each of these lines represents a Microsoft enterprise. It's important to understand that configuration changes that must take place in Microsoft, like building a direct route or a user or changing the app, require Microsoft credentials. And we don't store or attempt to cache that information for lots of security reasons. So during setup, you generally are working with the global admin for your customer to get the direct routing built and the app built. And then afterwards, there's anything you can do with the PBX or feature codes or portals that doesn't require a Microsoft login, so you manage it here from the reseller portal.
How do they set it up? I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to how do you set up TeamMate as a reseller?
Usually, in this, one of the hardest parts of beta is the first setup is always the hardest, because you're understanding all the parameters of the PBX that need to be put into the connector and understanding how to, what needs to come from Microsoft and be put in. So, but really, it's the onboarding is the training as well. So that's what we've seen. Learning what information you need and having it at the ready as you find that second, third, fourth enterprise customer is much easier. But yeah, we've seen, we've actually, during the beta, we've been offering what we call it, like no touch provisioning. So we just send you information on how to do it. And look, resellers that have been reading the documents and following them have had good success with setup. Although we are in beta, and we are looking for edge cases as well. So when things do come up, we have to hear about them, and that's been an important part of making the software better.
And I want to remind everybody that you can still enter our beta and join in. Emily's put at the top of the chat. And remember, questions and answers to go in the Q&A, guys. In the chat, you will find a link to the beta sign up. And the beta's been going quite well. And I think we've got like 60-something responses, and probably over 2/3 of them are actually in the beta at some stage. You've got, what, 10 actively integrated right now? Is that the latest number? Was it 5 or 10?
So we're doing a broad beta. I mean, for us, we're looking at anyone with a PBX, but we've been really the biggest single group have been SkySwitch resellers, and we really, that's a great community, and we've really enjoyed working with them. So I think we have 10 or 12 of the about 65 beta signups have been SkySwitch, and of the, this is 3 weeks old, of the beta, we have 40 something are active and making calls, and telling us what they like and don't like, and we love it.
That's really going to help, because what this means when it goes live, and we haven't announced the go live date yet, but we will. Please pay attention to the Weekender, because that'll be the first place you hear about it. Then we'll likely do a news release after that and some type of Google Groups mailing, because this is something significant that it's going to enhance the resellers' opportunity to sell more, make more money, and also fend off competition, because you'll be able to say, we've got Teams integration ready to go. We can do it. It's been live on our platform for months, etc. So I'm really happy about that. Michael, what's next?
Yeah, so I have a few slides. I get asked a lot. First of all, why anyone would want this connector and the ability to have this PBX calling built into Teams. And ultimately, that's a question for each of you as you gauge your customers and prospects for what they value and what they want. But what I've seen, and I tried to put together a couple of the trends I hear about as I talk to dozens of people about this. At the highest level, these four on the screen seem to be what compel companies to integrate calling into Teams. Let me just go through them. So mobile, Teams is a really good mobile and tablet app. They've really figured out push notification. That's no easy task. Many of you know that. It works great for calling, but you also get your chat and meetings and everything, and it's on the go. So the user on the go, that used to be the traveling salesperson before COVID, and hopefully it will be again, or executives or people who are moving a lot. Second is we integrate with Microsoft. If you're looking to embrace Microsoft users, it's a really good offensive strategy to have something that lets them use Microsoft and use you. So if you're already selling Microsoft as an MSP, this is maybe a missing link. The premium user, some service providers see this kind of connector as part of maybe a premium user package. Good way to get more dollars per user for the executives or salespeople as well. There's some crossover with mobile. The idea here is that not every user in an organization has to have Teams calling, just maybe the 5 people who want it and the other 50 don't, but you choose that. It's a good upsell. And then finally, and I do distinguish this from the others, the remote worker. So in COVID's world, supporting remote workers is much more important all of a sudden. Look, most of these workers aren't on mobiles and on the go. They're sitting at home on their laptops or their PCs, and they didn't bring their phone with them from the office. So this is a soft phone, and it's still in Teams, and it's still where they're doing all their other work. So it's perfect as part of a remote package.
Micah, this is so funny. The power of the webinar. I just quickly looked in my mailbox, and since 11:05 today, when we got going and talking about this, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Count quicker, Andy.
14, 15 more registrants into your beta. That's great.
It's free. It's worth knowing about. It's an important trend. I mean, all these, these. I feel like when we started building this, I didn't think it would be in such demand, and I thought it was a good idea. But this is important. It's an important crossover in business systems. So I think I get it.
It's great.
Yeah,
a 25% bump in 30 minutes. That's a record, guys. Thank you all, the resellers, for wanting to help Micah and SkySwitch really deliver a superior product to what other companies are touting, which is not quite the same. I think you were talking about the mobile and the Microsoft integration and the whole idea of the remote worker, or what I like to say, the elsewhere worker these days, because you're working elsewhere. You used to work in an office, used to work at home. Some people went to a coffee shop, a co-working facility. I lump all that. We did a webinar with Jeff Dworkin in the Cloud Voice Alliance, and I coined the phrase working elsewhere. And Teams, to me, feels like a very complete elsewhere product.
Yeah.
And it's not just the on the road. We used to refer to them as the field force. Who's out in the field? Because everybody else was at the mothership. But now the field is the majority, and the majority needs a tool set, a communications platform that gives them all of their information. And this feels to me, for those who are on the Office 365 platform, as that extension. It's like Office 365 and Teams, and pretty soon you're going to see the two even more tightly woven. It won't be two separate products, it'll all be one. At least that's the way I see Microsoft going, based on some of the other acquisitions they've made for software, for things like reminders and to-do lists. They bought Wonderlist a few years ago and killed it off and brought out a new to-do list manager. They keep weaving more things tightly together, and it feels like it's coming from the team side more than 365 side.
Yeah, so I'm going to rain on your parade a little, Andy. So what, another question that comes up a lot has to do with how to understand your relationship with Microsoft. So, we're talking a lot about the glory of integration, and it is a great platform. On one hand, this platform everyone's using, it's sort of a place you want to be. On the other hand, Microsoft has I believe it was since December of 2015 when they announced the cloud PBX on Skype for Business, they've had a PBX competitor to SkySwitch, or to, it's sort of to anyone who sells PBX. And generally these are appealing to smaller companies. I mean, whenever anyone big switches or intimates they're going to switch, Microsoft does a press release because that's big news. But yeah, I mean, so on one hand, these platform providers do so many things that there's places where we all compete with them. So I look at this as, when are you on offense or when are you on defense as a PBX sales organization? So here's some suggestions. It definitely depends on your market, who you're selling to specifically. If you're selling to smaller businesses, Teams PBX might be more appealing. It depends what features your users are buying, and other variables that but really on defense, you're differentiating from Microsoft by providing support, maybe some customizations or reports that your customers value. Like I said, there are features that you have on NetSapiens that absolutely are not in Teams yet, and the ability to configure is much more extensive on a platform like SkySwitch than you're ever going to find in Microsoft Teams. On offense, since a lot of companies can't easily replace PBXs, but they're sold on using Teams, you provide the bridge. That's pretty straightforward. We're all still pretty early market in Teams calling. There are, like I said before, there are people who are selling SIP trunking, but there's very few PBX integration options. So there's an advantage now to being ready, being an early mover. I think this is something SkySwitch has done a great job of over the years, is move quickly on new technologies that can be relevant and give you these options. This is definitely another case. And finally, on offense, if you start selling integration with Teams, I said it earlier in the presentation, I can't say it enough times, that you're tapping into a huge Microsoft user base for leads, and you have something to talk to them about. So that's all I prepared. Andy, I can show a live demo. I know there's a lot of questions. I just want to make sure that we get through a lot of what people want to hear today, and of course thank everyone for their time, and make sure I'm available for. I think here's my information. I'm available for follow up, as is Fareed and Andy and the SkySwitch team.
This was great, and to see 18 or 19 additional registrants, and we're up to 18 or 19 last I looked, for the beta within the last 40 minutes or so, is a credit to the great delivery and the great explanation that, Micah, you gave to everybody. I would like to see a live demo. Now, everybody, that live demos are very risky. They're very dangerous.
I'll do it. We'll do it.
But we're going to give it a try here. We're going to give it the old college try, so that you can see just how cool Microsoft Teams integration is with SkySwitch.
So what you're seeing on my screen now is Teams. It's in an incognito browser because I'm in my own Teams. This is one of my test accounts. I chose this one for this call because it is actually registered to SkySwitch. We have lots of.
Micah, I'm seeing your PowerPoint.
Okay. Let me stop sharing and reshare with the
browser.
with the more general screen. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for
There
telling
you
me.
go.
There you go. So I showed you static views of this, so now you're seeing probably where I took them from in the first place. This is the native dialer in Teams right here. You can dial PSTN numbers, you can dial extensions, you can dial star codes, you can do it all from here, and it all goes to the PBX. So that's and then when you make a call, you have a history. If you have contacts, which I have none, you can click on the contacts and use a dialer. If you're on a website and there's a phone number that's highlighted, you can click on it and it goes, Teams generates the outbound call through the PBX. This is all things calling from your PBX, just like a soft phone, and it is indeed. The app we've installed here and that you install for each enterprise is, I've pinned it right here on the side. I've called it something random because I have systems for naming things, but here it is. And the three parts of that are, first, the bot that lets you see when things happen, like I get a voicemail or I turn on different features and get status updates, or if a live call comes in, I get a call card. The second portion of this is the end user portal. So this looks probably familiar to many of you. This is the NetSapiens portal that SkySwitch delivers. I have an unbranded version of it. So these, there's some parts of this that are sort of neat, like over here, you can see what's going on with different users in your group. I claim no credit for this portal. All we do is put it in here. This is all SkySwitch. And so you'll be able to put this portal in, or whatever portal you want to put in here is really the thing. And then finally, the PBX feature management page, which is getting an overhaul before we go to GA, but ultimately lets you click buttons and sort of click a send feature code, and then when you look over at the PBX, you should have your do not disturb turned on right here. Another way to turn on and turn off, I mentioned in my presentation, I call it quick codes, but feature code 79 is turn off do not disturb. So you can do it here, and if you look at your portal, we should have the do not disturb should be back off. There it is. Okay, and we got a notification here in Teams that feature code was processed successfully. So the idea is this user never has to leave Teams for calling or PBX management, or hopefully anything related to their relationship with the NetSapiens you're providing. And that's it for the presentation.
That's so clean. That's so simple. We've got lots of questions, and
let's do them. Do you want me to stop sharing and?
No, yeah, stop sharing, and
or I'll just go back to I'll go back to the page here. So
there you go. Perfect. So
ask away.
The first question comes from Robert Harney. Hello, Robert. Welcome again. He says, or he asks, a competitor of SkySwitch is talking about Teams integration as native versus a bolt-on, and how native is superior. Can you address this?
Native is superior. I totally agree. Yeah. So bolt-ons. Who has a bolt-on? Grandcentral has a bolt-on. So Grandcentral, when you click on something in Teams, it takes you outside of Teams to their client, which also has to be running on your desktop or your mobile. It's kludgy for the end user. It undermines efficiency. Using the native features within Teams is intuitive. Using the buttons that say transfer and hold are intuitive. If you start putting them other places, it undermines the utility.
So what we're doing is we're making it native.
Native, yeah. Exactly.
So the SkySwitch solution, Robert, is a native solution, which means whatever the competitor is telling you, guess what? We're already doing it. Yep. Andy Aloya says, for the mobile portion, would this effectively operate as a replacement for Reach UC?
I cannot endorse that, but yes.
All right. Jody Long says, Teams has the integrated telephony component. When a customer says, why don't we just use Teams for telephony versus a company like SkySwitch, how would you respond And then can you give some insight as to where SkySwitch actually fits into the solution?
So I covered that a bit on that last slide. Flip on down there so I can revisit it, because I think that's a really important question. And I think I don't have an answer for you. I think that really depends on who you're selling to. So it could be that when that customer looks at the features they're using, Teams PBX does not have them. It could be that your support, your customization is important to them. Your white glove service is not something they're going to get from Microsoft. So, and customization is absolutely they're not going to get. So I think this is, as you formulate a strategy for walking a tight line between selling into a very popular platform where there's some built-in competition from Microsoft, you need to be clear on why it's good for that particular customer. I keep thinking back to what was his name, Keenan, the crazy guy who did the presentation at Vectors, who I loved actually, but really listen to your customer. So if they're using features that are really important to them, and Microsoft Teams doesn't have it, great. But if they're using features they don't care about as much, okay, maybe you haven't actually taken Teams PBX off the table. So but yeah, so I don't have a definitive answer. I think it's really important, and maybe this is something SkySwitch can do to maintain a feature by feature comparison.
Great idea. We'll make a note of that.
If I can add my 2 cents here, it's the solution is really tailored to fit its particular need of connecting TeamMate users to SkySwitch after the users, or after you determine that SkySwitch is the solution, the telephony solution. Then you have the hurdle of connecting that and avoiding installing a second piece of software, a second soft phone on their computer. Then Team Connector comes in play, right? So definitely SkySwitch is more feature rich than Microsoft.
Great. We have another question from Robert. He wanted to know if the Team solution goes cross-platform between laptop, desktop, and iPhone or Android applications.
Yes.
It does exist, and Microsoft already has it built. Next question from Eddie Clark. Where can I get a list of supported session border controllers? Micah, I've seen that on the Teams direct routing help page. They ran a whole list of whose SBCs already work, including things like Metaswitch and Ribbon and quite a few others.
Yeah, when they announced almost 2 years ago, there were 4 or 5 of them: Oracle's, Acme, Ribbon, Sonos, Audio Codes, a small company in Germany called AnyNode, and one other, I think, ThinkTel, and they've added Metaswitch about a month before they bought Metaswitch, and that's it. So there's a really long list of people who wouldn't have trouble interoping. In fact, our TeamMate connector can interop with Microsoft Teams directly. We could be certified, but there's no way to get certified now. So you can find the list on Microsoft's website. I can provide you that link, Andy, and you can make it available, but it's pretty easy to search under the terms Microsoft Direct Routing Certified SBC, and you'll get the list.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question from Phil Hoff. Does this work with contact center users or their supervisors?
So we haven't tried out all these different scenarios, but the questions that I would ask, and the answer would, in a lot of cases would be absolutely. Is the contact center user a SIP registration, and how complex is that registration? And if it's SIP, it's within a range that we do support. And then a lot of what you see in contact centers is actually done via portals. So it's a rich user experience where you manage your contact center user, see the queues, manage calls. can you put a portal into Teams? Absolutely, yeah. So can you put the contact center portal in there? If it supports single sign-on, absolutely, and iframes, yes.
Some really good questions coming up, so don't run away yet. Joseph Misio wants to know the price. What does this cost? And we haven't really set SkySwitch pricing yet for this, but what are some of the costs that a reseller needs to be thinking about as they're educating their client base?
Yeah, and that's a two-part question, I'll say, because there's what is SkySwitch going to charge for this integration, and I'm not going to answer that. I don't know the answer. It sounds like you guys haven't narrowed it down completely. And then there's what do you need from Microsoft licensing to support this integration. And so to use direct routing, you need a license that goes by a bunch of names in Microsoft, but it's this phone system is one version of it. I've also seen it in the last 2 months. Many of you have seen Microsoft Business Voice was announced. Microsoft Business Voice has phone system in it and calling plans. And the phone system is what you need. And the calling plans is if you want to buy your origination and termination and DID from Microsoft, which no one on this call does. So it's you need that license that supports phone system, which can range from, I've seen it pretty low for nonprofits up to about, I think $8 is sort of the rack rate if you buy it. You know, if anyone can buy it online for $8 for phone system.
Andy Aloya asks, does Microsoft Teams also integrate with Teams-based meetings, or does the TeamMate connector integrate with Teams-based meetings and direct dial-in for those meetings?
No, it doesn't. It's an interesting one. A lot of people ask that one. So a lot of you are used to providing dial-in phone numbers for your conference bridge. And so audio conferencing is what Microsoft calls it. And your choice there is you can either use the numbers that Microsoft provides, or you can choose your own number and port it into Microsoft. But you can't have, that won't come in as of today. And I haven't seen an announcement they're going to change that. You can't use your numbers.
Next
that,
question
on your platform.
Next question comes from Gordon Beck. For non-MSP resellers, how much involvement is required by the customer's MSP?
The customer's MSP. Not sure I understand that.
So
Gordon,
the way I'm reading into this,
answer it.
I think this is if someone's not selling Office 365, and their customers get it, and they're selling telephony, but the MSP is somebody else. That's how I kind of read it, Mike. I think he's saying, I sell telecom. They get their Office 365
you need the global.
from somebody else.
So to set this up, you need the global admin credentials. So there's two things you're doing when you set up this connection that require that high level of access into Microsoft Enterprise, which is either held tightly by the enterprise themselves, their global admin, or often they'll delegate that to the MSP and say, hey, you guys know this, you set it up. But setting up direct routing and setting up an application are both things that are Microsoft admin level. And then setting up Teams users that have this calling capability is a Teams level admin user. So no question, for all three of those, you need the involvement of the person who has a global admin credential, whether it's the MSP or the enterprise.
Next question comes from Jody Long. After you've integrated, what happens when you need to make adds, moves, and changes? Where is that done? And do the changes update the flow in both directions? Great question.
So you do that. You would do that in I showed the portal. There's an enterprise provisioning portal and reseller portal. So that's where you would make changes if a password changes or you want to add or delete a user. You just add or you sort of can manage the fields or the users. The second part of it's tricky. Nothing in the connector affects the flow of the traffic. That's regulated by the PBX and Teams. We're just the interstices of between the two. So I think the answer to the second part is no, and the portal is the first part, Jody.
Okay. Our next question, and this is a real basic one, and it's one we've talked about, and it's changing. This is not something which what you read 3 months ago is still the same today. What Microsoft license would a customer actually need?
And it's back to that. And this is, I could talk about this for the full hour, but it's the phone system license. If you're adding this on to an enterprise level user, E1, E3, or the equivalent for, you know, education or nonprofit or government, A1, F1, you know, F3, those is add-on phone system. And then there's something that I've seen now marketed under the Microsoft Business Voice without calling plans, which is a mouthful, but I've seen that actually written on Microsoft's website. And a lot of you who buy from distributors like Pax8 or SureWeb or Ingram, that's what they call this license, Microsoft Business Voice without calling plans.
Question from Gregory Robel. Does this also support SMS integration?
Not yet, although that's a really hot one on our list, and I'd say SkySwitch is who has, I think, been a leader in that kind of integration, has been the main catalyst for us to provide that. That's a little tricky to build for a few reasons, but we look forward to putting that capability to support SMS into and out of that, probably just that chatbot line in the near future. I mean, that's something that's on our list for soon after general availability. I would imagine we'd have that integrated by Q4.
Aaron Dieter wants to know if you can describe the video conferencing features of Teams a little bit more.
I can't. No, that's a great question. That's one of those things where that's actually that's Teams. So we don't impact that at all. That's considered part of meetings and Teams. So if you add, you know, so we don't carry video or conference to video in Teams. So, and yeah, I use it a lot, and but it doesn't interact with the PBX unless you're pulling in an audio-only caller, and you know, and you're pulling them in, and that can go through the PBX.
Well, my question there would be, does it support SIP video, and a person can do a point-to-point SIP call through the soft phone?
And I think it might, but not through our connector. It's
Okay.
a team. That would be Teams doing it.
Libas Bueno, how long does it take to set this up, and how do we get training? Well, the second part I can answer. Join the beta.
Yeah.
And you'll quickly learn how this gets done, and that will give you a running start. There will be training materials that come once this goes live, but to learn it, to learn how you do it, join the beta. It's free, and it's a community, and not only are you going to learn faster, you're going to learn sooner than, say, your competitors. Now, how long does it take to set up?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the answer to that is completely dependent on Microsoft's speed of propagation. This has been a real frustration with a lot of people who develop into Microsoft Office. It's a massive, amazing infrastructure they've built, but it can be slow. So oftentimes, if you're in Microsoft, you'll do something and you'll get a notice that says, "Please wait up to 24 hours before you open a ticket," things like that. So generally, the answer is 1 minute to 24 hours. We've provisioned end to end in 12 minutes. I think that's the fastest, and I like to be proud of that. But that's just because Microsoft activated the direct routing. Let the users be activated, loaded the app, they did it. So our coding and telling it what to do is, seconds, but the Microsoft response is, usually minutes or more.
Brian Staymate says, you mentioned the mobile app. Does Team have their own mobile app, or is this something that's coming from TeamMates, or are you adding it? He's a little unclear.
It's Teams.
It's
the
official Teams app that's already out in various flavors for download. So there you go, Brian. He has another question, and this is a little tricky. He says, we have both hosted SkySwitch and, which is we call Cloud Voice, and SIP trunk customers. What type of license is required for this? Is it just the SIP trunks, or do they need a fully hosted license per each user?
A license. I mean, on the Microsoft side, for the SIP trunks or the registered users, it's the same license. It's that phone system or Microsoft Business Voice. On the SkySwitch side, I mean, I imagine you guys differentiate between trunk users and full PBX users. Yeah.
So he also wanted to know about the cost and the calling add-on. You addressed that one earlier. Libis, I hope the demo that Micah did just about the time you were asking for it met your expectations. Same thing with Joe Bauer. Same thing with Mark Rowe. If you need a deeper demo, contact Micah and he will tape you through it. We had another question. What do costs look like compared to Teams natively for calling? We have not yet set the pricing, Mr. Anonymous Attendee. Come on, you're a reseller of ours. Don't be anonymous.
It's a good question, too. It's a good question.
Yeah. Libis says he's also from Worcester, Massachusetts, so he's in a neighborhood to you, so maybe you guys can, get together. Mark Rowe says, is there an E911 component to TeamMate Connector as users move from location to location, which I guess means, are you doing an IP lookup when someone goes from one place to another?
We are not. It's a good idea. Don't know how that would
on the
work.
roadmap, right?
Yeah, I don't know how it would work exactly, but that seems important. Yeah.
Andy Aloya says, can you customize the bot's name?
Yes. And the team it's a part of and the logo. Yeah.
Aaron Dieter wanted to know where to get the app. The app's in the App Store. It's a Teams app. It's not anything special.
No. It's not. It's not.
What, the Teams app's not in the App Store?
The Teams application is the mobile app. Yeah, sorry, that's in the App Store. Right.
And not then the where do they get where do they get the TeamMate Connector app?
The PBX app is I mean that's so the PBX app you build and you load and it's a custom build. So you're loading it in. It's not in the Teams App Store, meaning when you're in Teams, there's an App Store and there's like 700 or 800 apps now. This is actually a custom one that you're building. That's why it has the naming and the branding that you want. And it has the portal you want and the feature codes you want, all that's because you control it.
So the reseller can brand it their brand or even their customer's brand.
Whatever, they want, yep.
Joseph Misio says, can you turn off the PBX features for the users from inside Teams?
Yes. If it's a feature code, you can do it. Yeah, so if it's like there's turning on and turning off features, if generally that's a feature code, a star code that you send, and that's what we're supporting. Yes.
Rich McGahan was saying, so Teams seems to replace Reach UC and literally becomes an extension on the phone system. Correct, it becomes an extension on the phone system. Rather than saying a replacement for Reach UC, we'd like to say it's an alternative for those Office 365 users who are connecting in, who get additional integration and deeper functionality, Rich. Gordon Beck wants to know, will Teams show your phone's presence?
The difficult question. So yes and no. So if someone calls you in and you answer it in Teams, the PBX says you're off hook, Teams is off hook, you're busy. If you make a call out from Teams, same thing, PBX is busy, Teams is busy. Right now, Microsoft has not exposed the API for presence management in Teams. So we can't automatically update it. So for instance, let's say someone calls you and it rings in Teams, but you answer it on your phone, not in Teams, on your PBX phone. We know, our TeamMate Connector knows you're busy because we got the SIP message, but we can't toggle it in Teams yet. This has been a huge, and you can do this in Skype for Business. So a lot of the people who are transitioning have complained mightily that this is a holdup. They want to make that available, and Microsoft has announced that presence will be manageable via API. So not yet, but as soon as it's ready, we want to be. We'll do that.
Here's another question from Rich McGahan. He says, how does the call recording work? Right now with Reach UC, they have to use Amazon S3 for backup recordings for anything over 30 days. How would Microsoft Teams allow us to call record and maintain them for extended periods?
I don't know what Microsoft's product is in call recording. I don't, I mean, we don't sell Microsoft, anything Microsoft. We just do the connector. But what you can do is you can keep whatever you have today and turn on and turn off call recording from within Teams. So the user's on a call they want to record. You've built it so, and that's star code also. So I don't know what it is on NetSapiens, but so push a button, turn on call recording, and you're telling the PBX that is recording your calls today with that same feature code to start recording. So that's one way of doing it, not change what you're doing today and just let it be triggered from within Teams.
Here's a great question from Brad Batten, and we sort of talked about it a little earlier. He wanted to know if there's a feature comparison between what Teams offers and what the SkySwitch TeamMate native integration offers. I think it would be really good for Reed, and you can work on this over the next few weeks before we bring this out from betas, to do a 3-part comparison. One is Teams as a standalone, another is SkySwitch and what we offer, and then our SkySwitch TeamMate native integration that shows it. So you don't have to talk about it now, but if we can produce that and then float it through the beta users, what now looks like, I think we got another 20-something already today, Micah. We can float it through them, get their feedback, fine-tune the document, make it crystal clear, and then it becomes a resource that our resellers can use to help. From a marketing perspective, Emily and Fareed, we'll make that an action item to get cranking on, and hopefully by 3 weeks from now have something done, if not sooner. Joseph Misio says, is this product white labeled? Absolutely, or we wouldn't be using it, right, Micah?
Yeah, I mean, yes, yeah, absolutely. There are certain, I mean, it's a far-reaching question. So there's a question of what does a user see, what are the different brandable components. There are certain things deep inside of Microsoft Office, like in Azure Active Directory, where something pops up that isn't you don't control what pops up there. We're in the process now of making those generic names, like connection to PBX or connection to Teams. There's a domain, there's a few other things. So without belaboring it, it's not perfectly brandable yet because of limitations on Microsoft, but we're working on making it generic where it's not brandable.
Scott wants to know, is the license annual or lifetime?
Which license?
He says, is the ME license an annual or lifetime? I don't know what the ME stands for.
MS?
MS license, probably the Microsoft
yeah.
license, yeah.
It's neither, it's monthly. It's Microsoft Office 365 is all recurring revenue. I'm sure there's annual plans as well, but it's some kind of recurring. It's not a perpetual license.
Right, and that's Microsoft moving it from being, for customers, from being CapEx to an OpEx expense to get people off of those hardware PBXs. Kristen wanted to know if you can send and receive SMS text through the Teams portal. You answered that earlier. Not yet, but it is something that's being requested. Daryl Panzer asked another question about the SBC. Do we need to provide one?
Nope. No. I mean, the SBC does a pretty simple job here. It communicates with Teams. That's it. And so we've tested on a few. We've tested directly on our own TeamMate connector, but ultimately we wanted to go with a certified version. So what we've deployed is multiple audio codes. So it's audio codes infrastructure, all running in Azure Cloud. Didn't talk about that, but all components of the connector, including the SBC, are running in Azure Cloud.
One question from Daryl Panzer. Does this work with third-party PBXs and the use of a SIP trunk, or simply on the SkySwitch platform?
You have to meet me behind the building after this call, Daryl. But it works with any SIP-based PBX.
Great. Next question comes from Ken revealed Ken Sennington says, I didn't mean to be anonymous. Thank you, Ken, for coming to the forefront. Dale Morgan thanks us for the idea of a 3-way comparison. Fareed, make a note. We want Dale to see it first because he recognizes the importance of it. Thank you, Dale. And we have one last question, which is, how do you perceive the recent Microsoft acquisition of Metaswitch will affect this technology in the future? Oh, we could go on for hours on that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's big picture view, there's smaller picture. I mean, this specific technology, well, Metaswitch doesn't have this technology. You know, I guess they have two things that are relevant to this crowd. They have a certified SBC for setting up SIP trunking on direct routing. And then they have their PBX, their whatever it's called, Max, I believe, PBX, which my guess, I mean, there's been some speculation that, you know, Microsoft has their Teams PBX, which is suboptimal. They've built it. It's pretty new. It's getting better, but it's, you know, it's not going to be as good as what Metaswitch has. So maybe this is a preferred kind of outside of Teams PBX. That might happen. I don't see Microsoft doing that. You know, I lived through I sold my last company to Broadsoft right before Cisco bought them, and I watched sort of what Cisco did with that technology, and it's, you know, they really, bigger companies don't handle complexity that well, and so you know, I think a lot of you guys handle it really well because it's customer focused. So does Microsoft want to sell an even more complex PBX without support? Maybe. Are they going to be successful at it? They'll definitely get some people interested because they're Microsoft, but yeah, I'm not too worried about that.
I'm going to echo what you're saying. I'm not too worried about it. I've been, you know, in the VoIP space since 1999 and have had 20 some companies that we've been involved with go through acquisitions by the big players, Vonage and others like that. Google has acquired Grandcentral. This is the play with Metaswitch has a lot more to do with putting software into the Azure cloud around things like 5G, but is really aimed at the enterprise, the really large scale enterprise, where Microsoft wants to be able to provide advanced communication functionality that they don't have, that has to go in and out and in and out of the enterprise, especially a distributed enterprise around the world. So I would be, as most of you are, all of you focus on the small business market, meaning that sub 200 seat market. There's some who go a lot higher, but the sub 200 seat market of a single customer. What Microsoft's doing with Metaswitch won't hurt you, at least not for a long, long time. And as Mike has said, integrations take a long time to get done. I remember when Google acquired Grandcentral, it was at least 3 years before that integration was finally done, and Google was able to say we actually have a product called Google Voice. So don't worry so much about it. Here's a question from Jacob, and I'm going to recommend, Micah, that you and Jacob have a conversation. He says, it's really tough for me to understand why, if I'm paying for Microsoft Business Voice and I already received native VoIP functionality inside Teams, why he needs SkySwitch. He says he saw your slide, but more on this will be helpful. You want to give us 30 or 40 seconds on that, but I think you and Jacob should have a conversation because there is a distinct difference between having the SkySwitch PBX and cloud voice solution completely integrated and what you're going to buy just from Business Voice.
So there's two ways to look at that question, and I think Jacob's asking it from a cost perspective. So, you know, what, you know, is saying, wouldn't it be cheaper if? And so, and then the second is what you actually are buying and what you're getting. So let me start with cost. So when you spend the money to buy a phone system and you get these features and direct routing, it's another $12 or so to buy the inbound, outbound calling and DID. So right away, that sort of brings the total price of Microsoft Business Voice up quite a bit, up around $20, I think is where they're selling it. So not too far below maybe what you'd be selling SkySwitch plus the $8 plus the connector fee. But on cost straight up, if those Teams features work, then that they're gonna say, well, it's a little cheaper, so that's maybe we'll look at it. But then we're back to what Fareed, what you're going to be working on, which is a feature by feature comparison. So there's features, there's like, oh, it doesn't do what I want, but really a lot of it is what's around those features, which are your people and support and responsiveness and anything custom and assistance and what you do as an MSP or a PBX vendor that keeps your customers near and dear to you. So that's what I see. I mean, Microsoft can't replicate that, but if you just flash numbers in front of people, it might look a little cheaper.
Great. Well, that's going to wrap it up. We've run 15 minutes over our normal hour. A credit to you, Micah, for delivering such an incredible presentation. Fareed, thank you. For those of you who want to get some more technical information on how this works, Emily's dropped Fareed's contact details in the chat for you to email him directly. Then you can elevate to a call. If you haven't signed up for the beta list is in there. It'll also be in the email that comes out tomorrow as part of the webinar rewind. And we'll probably tag it one last time this week in our Friday Weekender. I hope you're all opening the Weekender and reading it. It's how we tell you everything that's happened this past week in SkySwitch land. On behalf of the SkySwitch management team, all the people you know and all the people you love, a big thank you to you for joining in. Micah, great job, Fareed, and as always, Emily, you did another great job at building the crowd. I saw us hit almost 100 people tuned in, and we stayed that way quite through the entire broadcast up until about 12 noon, and then we dropped off a little bit. So we had a great time today. It was wonderful having you all with us. I can't wait for next week's webinar when we have our good friend and colleague, Jeff Dorkin from the Cloud Voice Alliance. He's going to talk all about how your customer's journey is fueled by content and support. It's all about acquisition of the customer, how to close them, how to go over the content you need to be providing them information each step of the customer journey, and how you can get all that from the CVA portal. If you haven't checked out the CVA portal, if you haven't talked to Jeff, do so. The registration link is here also in the chat. You'll see an email invite later this week. That call is going to be, like always, here on our SkySwitch webinar platform, Tuesday, June 16th, 11 a.m. And don't forget to keep an eye out, because we've got 3 lucky winners of that very, very highly sought after SkySwitch swag packs, where you get a t-shirt, a pop socket, a gorgeous pair of socks, and a really cool hat, which you're going to need as the summertime is coming out and that sun beats down on your head when you're outside taking your phone call using the Teams connector. On behalf of TeamMate Technology and all of SkySwitch, have a great day, and thank you for listening in.